Hello, and yeah, I hope you're enjoying RemixConf as I do. Do you? Right? Thank God, I hear huge yes. Thank you. That's what I was expecting. So anyway, besides from that, I'm here for you today to share with you the information of how you can remix your UI and UX into another level. And before I go into that, my name is Arisa Fukuzaki. You can call me Arisa. I'm originally from Japan, Hiroshima, but currently living in Germany for 5 years. But don't ask me about my German skills. It's really awful. Anyway, yeah, at work, I work as a developer relations engineer at Storyblok. And yeah, like today's conference, I give, for example, tech talks in various kind of conferences. Also, like we are focusing on for improving user experience. So, but besides from that, boring part because of course you could expect that I'm gonna introduce about myself, what I do at work, but I want to introduce about myself in more personal level. So yeah, I'm an ambassador at GirlCode. So GirlCode is an organization to empower women to transition their careers into tech or start to work as developers. And just recently, I was able to become a Google developer expert in web technology, as well as I strongly believe in communities because that's where I was able to gain my skills and knowledges rapidly. So I organized a Japanese tech community called Lilac. All right. Earlier in the beginning, I promised you that I'm here to share with you how you can remix your UI and UX to another level. How exactly I'm going to share with you today. So I came up with the idea, okay, why not to share with some real story that I have experienced? And to start with that, let me start to say with this couple of few sentences. So UI and UX, these things are actually in everywhere. It's not something that only being limited to the developer society or tech world. That's something that, for example, when you were like getting on the airplane and then like waiting for example, until to arrive to the airport, whole this experience and the journey you will have, that's also UX. Let's say like if you want to watch the movies during on board in the flight, you will see the user interface, right? So based on that, UI and UX, these things can make you feel very happy, but at the same time, very sad as well, or even sometimes being mad. And we are going to see why together, based on the true story. So we are going to see Lost in an Island from bad UI and UX with horror emoji. But don't worry, I cannot watch horror movies, so it's not going to be horror. So, as I told you before, this is a real story that I have experienced. So, I was traveling a nice, beautiful landscape in Sweden. So, me and my boyfriend, we decided to discover beautiful islands in Göteborg. Why not? To conclude our last day of the vacation, it's perfect. So we went there to take beautiful photos like this. But of course, when we are going to travel to islands, there's 101 you need to keep in your mind. That would be like checking your next ride to go back to the main island or to go to the next, islands to discover more. So as a passenger, I got on the ship and got off from the ship. I was able to find this building, which looks like port or station. And of course, I would expect that there would be the timetable that I can take a look at my next ride. So far, so good. And here's the timetable. You can see that it's real. You see some of the shades. And in here, I have no clue what is written because everything is written in Swedish, but it doesn't matter because I believe that, word-wise, to check the time, it's written in numbers. So we got off our ship around 1 p.m. So our next ride is something like 2:46 p.m. Okay, so we have more than an hour to discover an island. So we did. We took nice photos. And just to be sure, because we would like to, be prepared extra, so we went back to the port like 15 minutes before. And look what had happened. The ship just left us, It didn't look like, they were going to stop at the port at all. Instead, they just boom, just went away without paying any attention at all. So at this moment, I clearly realized that there must be something very important information I missed. So I went back to the timetable and look what it was written. You need to give a call no later than 30 minutes before your departure. What? Right? I want to see that. How many of you could guess that I had to give a call no later than 30 minutes before of the departure I wanted to take? I want to see that. Okay, I see a few, but clearly I think that I don't need to feel I'm the only one person missed this information. I would say although it was written in a foreign language that I don't understand, first of all, I had to realize that right next to the timetable, there is a tiny, small capital T to, for some reason, guide you to the bottom, and then telling you that this very important information. So I was like, okay, but let's try to be optimistic. There has to be another ride, and thank God there was a last ride of the day. But when I took a look at the time, it's 3 hours from now on. So, of course, I wanted to enjoy my last day of my vacation, not being stuck in an island. So this is literally me. And I'm not happy at all. And this is inside of my mind. I honestly thought I could turn myself into a golem or whatever, But then I still try to be optimistic. I kind of try to train myself to be. So I kind of hope that maybe this very calm, wave sound with seabirds, with quiet environment will calm me down. But no, it's not. I'm unhappy because I need to wait for 3 entire hours with nothing else, no human beings around, but only empty summer houses. It means that we didn't bring any food, we didn't bring any drinks, so yeah, it's awful. But it's not like in the end, I couldn't go back to the main island. Yes, I was able to go back to the main island. However, my entire journey, to enjoy the last day of my vacation in a beautiful island ended up in really bad experience. All right, so here's the message, what I wanted to tell from this, real story, Lost in an Island. So great UI and UX can make you feel very happy. If you want to, for example, achieve the things you wanted to have, or if you could get the things you wanted to have, plus if you could get extremely, let's say, nice, cool experience, you're gonna remember this, experience as in a good way of unforgettable, memories, right? But what if, in the end, you could get something what you wanted to have, but at the same time, the experience, whole journey to, achieve the goals that you wanted to get was awful, then even if you were able to get something you wanted to have in the end, you're not gonna be happy. Maybe you're gonna think about okay, I'm not gonna go to travel to Sweden anymore because my experience was awful. So let's transition, this Lost in an Island story into the technologies you like. I'm pretty sure everyone here in this room have favorite technologies or tech stacks of their choice. This is one of the examples of my favorite tech stacks. So I love Remix and Storyblok, and let's take a look at why. So starting from the Remix. So look at this. Remix is very fast and resilient. And you can already see that from very simple, let's say action in here. I'm just simply try to, up and running the local host to start to build my Remix project. And usually I came from I got used to, with the, let's say, few longer seconds that I will have even enough time to make coffees, to wait my localhost will start to run. But no, Remix doesn't give you that time. Maybe if you're about to stand up to go to the kitchen and to make the coffee, no, it's already done. You don't have time. So this much how Remix is very fast and resilient. Moving on to the Storyblok. So Storyblok is a headless CMS, and it has the real-time visual editor integrated in it. Plus, you'll be able to enjoy reusable component based on the atomic design methodology, means that you can reuse these components. At the same time, you can nest all of the components each other in there. And the rest of the talk, I'm going to show you one demo project that I have built. So this is the Remix Storyblok blog project. I need to pronounce it right. If you want to take a look at in your environment and test it out, here's the QR code. You can take a photo, or if you prefer URL, there's the link. All right, to get started, to play around with this demo, first of all, I want to create the link between Remix and Storyblok, because by default, of course, we don't have the connections to each other yet, but you will be able to create such kind of connection with very simple 3 steps in under 2 minutes, I promise. If I exceed, you can say boo. Anyway, so first, there is the step 1. So let's create the brand new Remix project. You can run this one single line of command, npx create remix, add like this. And then next up, we are going to install one SDK that is provided from Storyblok side. So you can just simply install by running the command of npm install storyblok /react. First step is done. So second step is, well, by clicking this magic link, then you will be able to clone a project that is provided from Storyblok side. The reason why I offer this option is because, well, if you don't do that, then you need to create, for example, the components by taking a look at this demo example, and then there's going to be manual work. It's not fun, right? So to reduce your work, you can simply just click this magic link or make a photo of this QR code, and every component that you need, and even the page templates you need, because this is the blog project, you need to have the templates for, let's say, like each blog post and for each blog post. So you will have everything up and running. All right, we are already at the last step. So in here, we are going to add the preview API key token that is provided from Storyblok side. In here, all you need to pay attention is just 2 APIs that are provided from Storyblok side. So the first API is called Storyblok init. This is an API to initialize the Storyblok API. And the second API that is called API plugin, you can set this API plugin in use property. If you do that, then you can say that, hey, I want to use this Storyblok API. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to set it. Okay, I hope it was in under 2 minutes. So next up, we were able to create the connection between Storyblok and Remix, right? In next up, we want to create more in advance, let's say, logic in here. So I want to create the logic to be able to create components dynamically, and then I want to enable, these all the components to be editable, so that whoever want to make the changes in Storyblok side, they will be able to make the changes on the fly, and they can see the change in real time. And to do that, we are going to call or pay attention the 3 APIs that are coming from, again, Storyblok SDK that we just installed. So first one, Storyblok init, you already know that. We already took a look at together. So second API is called Storyblok component. So this is something that by calling this Storyblok component, you will be able to already have the full logic of how you're going to conditionally return. If the dynamic components are being rendered, then you want to render. If not, then you don't. And yeah, the last API is called Storyblok editable. So you're going to see how you can use this Storyblok editable to make each component being editable. And this example, you can see that. So first of all, let's pay attention to the Storyblok editable in here. So what I'm doing is that wrapping, let's say, the components that are going to be dynamically, being rendered, wrapping with the Storyblok editable API. So by doing so, you will be able to make these components that are going to go inside of this page template to be dynamically editable. So the users will be able to see the changes on the fly in one screen on the visual editor. I kind of forgot to mention you, sorry. This is the page template example. So what the users can see from the Storyblok visual editor side is that they can see on the right-hand side of this screenshot, there is the template called page, and on the right-hand side, there is a field type called blocks. So this block field type can contain whatever kind of components that are going to be defined. So as developers, we don't have to concern or worry about what kind of components, let's say, your content editors are going to define. We will let them to have full flexibility to decide. And in here, we can see that, okay, there's a Storyblok component API that I briefly mentioned in the previous slide. So this Storyblok component, you can see that it's being mapped, right? But why I already know that I can map these rest of the components that are going to be defined dynamically. And here's the secret. So from Storyblok, you can see the draft.json file or published JSON file if you already published the content, but I haven't yet published. So this is the draft.json that you can see all the data path you will need to, implement into your source code. So you can see that the data path is starting from story, and then the next path is going to content, and inside of the content, there's the body. We took a look at together this body is one of the field types that you are able to define from the Storyblok visual editor, right? And inside in here, you can see that it's an array object. And each objects are the components that, let's say, the content editors can define from the visual editor. That's why I already knew that I can use the map. Moving on to a little bit smaller scale of the components, such as, let's say, molecule or even atom, if I describe based on the atomic design methodology. So in here, I am creating the teaser component. So first of all, let's make it editable, right? So I wrap the components with Storyblok editable API, and then the rest of the work that I need to do is, first of all, I can pass, the beginning of the data path we took a look at together in the previous slide into this block prop. And the rest of the path, I just need to, just connect it together after this block prop. And that's it. There you go. And as a final step to complete, to create the logic of these dynamic components, I can just pass these, technical names of these components into this components property in there. And don't forget to import. All right, we were able to enable the full feature of the visual editor. So let's take a look at in an action. If I want to change, let's say, this Hello Remix to Hello Remix Conf 2022, you can see the changes in real time, of course, right? And if I want to change, let's say, the orders of these feature components that are nested inside of the grid, by the way, you also can create such kind of layout easily. I can easily do that. And of course, the bigger scale of, or bigger level of the components to change the orders, that's also very easy to do. If I want to keep the current progress and not to publish, I can just hit the save button and then share the current progress to the others. Congratulations, now you enable the full feature of the visual editor on Storyblok. But hold on a second. There is one more very important feature that we are missing in here. We don't have yet the logic that to create, let's say, dynamic routes, and even with the nested routes structure. And to create that, there is a very useful feature from Remix. And this is one of my favorite features because, for example, if you don't use splat routes, you will need to create, for example, a folder inside of the route directory, says, for example, contact. And inside of this contact folder, you need to create another, let's say, file, for example, has contact-us.ts, etc. So this way might not help your, let's say, the content editors to create nested routes, right? Plus, we want to make the we want to create the logic to create dynamically. And if you use splat routes, you just need to create one single file, which has the name of $. And here's an example. So I know there are a few lines of the code, or more than a few lines, but all I want you to pay attention in here is just the 2 APIs that are coming from Remix side and only 2 green highlighted lines of the code. So this use loader data API that is coming from Remix, time's up. Okay, I'm gonna be quick. It returns a JSON parsed data from loader function that I define underneath. And yeah, this loader function, it's actually a backend API, and it's wired up through already this use loader data. So in the end, you can just call this JSON API coming from Remix so that you do not have to write, for example, like new response and then setting headers as the second argument, etc. You don't need to do that. And for the splat routes, let's say handling, in this first green line of the, let's say highlighted line of the code, if you log, let's say this params parameter, with the square brackets and the strings of the asterisk, whenever you go back and forth between different pages, you will see that every single like fully nested routes are being logged out. So that's the logic I have implemented in here. And let's see in an action in the end. And I promise that will be the last one. So let's create, for example, something very easy, non-nested route, contact page. So I decided to give a name in here. Don't worry about the error in here. It's because we haven't yet decided what kind of components to use in this, let's say, contact page. And we haven't yet filled out any values at all into each field types. So as soon as I filled out these elements, and now I can see the contact page is up and running. And let's take a look at the nested routes. So first of all, I'm going to create my photo gallery, let's say nested route page. So I'm going to create a folder, has the name of photos, and inside in there, I'm going to create nested route that is going to show as photos/photos. So that's how I name my, let's say, page inside of this photos folder, and let's choose the template. And let's fill out the first value in this titles field type, and let's hit the save button. And now you can see that, okay, this page is up and running, so I can fill the rest of the content inside in there. So I can complete my photo gallery in here. Right. So you saw that good UI and UX will give you fast, smooth, and very organized experience, right? I don't think like some of the people don't like to have fast, smooth, and organized experience, right? I hope so. If so, I want to interview. Anyway, so as a last message, I want to tell you this. So you can, to be honest, achieve your goals with any kind of UI and UX. That's true. In the end, you will be able to get whatever kind of goals that you wanted to have. But what it does matter the most in here is the experience, your whole journey as developers, and for users experience. So let me conclude, or let me finish my talk by asking you this one single question. Which experience do you want to have? Do you want to be happy, or do you want to be sad? That would be all from me. Thank you, everyone.